You weren't supposed to find this. Not because it was hidden from you, but because most people walk right past the door their whole lives and never feel the handle turn. You felt it. Something in you stopped scrolling. Something in you leaned in. And if you're still here, still listening, then you already know this isn't about a word you can't pronounce. It's about a knowing you've carried since before you understood what knowing was. Noesis. They'll tell you it's a fancy term. A spiritual buzzword. Something for people who collect crystals and chase the next high. But I'm not here to give you a word. I'm here to give you back something that was always yours, a kind of seeing that doesn't come from your eyes, a kind of understanding that doesn't come from your head. The Bible has a name for it too. It just doesn't dress it up. It calls it the eyes of your heart being opened. And here's what most people miss. The eyes of the heart don't open because you studied harder. They open because heaven decided it was time for you to see. My name is George, and before I take you any deeper into this, I want you to understand who's talking to you. I'm not a scholar. I never stood behind a pulpit with 3 degrees on the wall. What I have, I earned in the dark on the floor of a rented room, on the nights when prayer felt like talking to a ceiling, on the mornings when I knew things I had no business knowing and couldn't explain to a single soul. I've walked this road, and I've watched what happens to people who reach this place and don't understand what's happening to them. They think they're losing their mind. They're not. They're waking up. So let me ask you something. And I want you to be honest, because no one's watching but you and God. Have there been moments when you knew something before it happened? Not a guess. Not a coincidence you talked yourself out of later. A knowing. Quiet, certain, the phone rings and you already know who it is and what they're going to say. You walk into a room and you feel the truth of it before anyone opens their mouth. You read someone's face and you see straight past the smile to the ache underneath. You've spent years thinking everyone could do that. Then one day you realize they can't. And that realization is lonely, isn't it? Because the gift that sets you apart is the same gift that makes you feel like you don't belong. That's where I want to start. Not with how special you are, with how alone it can feel to carry something you never asked for and can't put down. Let me tell you about a boy in the temple. It's late. Everyone's asleep. The old priest Eli is in his chamber, his eyes already failing, his sons already corrupting everything his name once stood for. And there's this boy Samuel, just a child really, handed over to the temple before he could understand why. And in the dead of night, he hears his name. Samuel, he runs to Eli. Here I am. You called me. And Eli, half asleep, tells him, I didn't call you. Go lie down. So he does. And it happens again. Samuel, and again he runs. And again Eli sends him back. 3 times. 3 times this boy hears something real and runs to the only authority he knows. And 3 times he's told it's nothing. Go back to sleep. Think about that for a second. The voice was real the whole time. The boy wasn't confused. He wasn't imagining it. He was hearing exactly what he thought he was hearing. The problem wasn't the voice. The problem was that no one around him, not even the priest, recognized what was happening. How many times has that been you? You felt something stir. You knew something shift. And you ran to the people around you, your spouse, your friend, your pastor, your own logic, and every one of them told you the same thing. It's nothing. You're tired. Go back to sleep. And here's where it gets real. It took an old, half-blind priest finally waking up enough to realize this isn't me he needs. This is God. And Eli tells him, next time you hear it, don't run to me. Say, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. That's the whole thing. That's the doorway. Most people spend their entire lives running to Eli, running to other people to explain the voice, when the voice was never meant to be explained. It was meant to be answered. Noesis isn't information. It's the moment you stop running to Eli and finally turn toward the voice itself and say, "I'm listening. Now I need to be careful here." Because this is exactly where people get hurt. They feel this awakening, and they go looking for it in the wrong places. They chase the feeling. They want the goosebumps, the chills, the dramatic vision. And listen to me, I'm not saying those things aren't real. But the deepest knowing rarely arrives like fireworks. It arrives like Elijah on the mountain. You remember Elijah, the prophet who'd just called down fire from heaven, the man who'd stood against 450 false prophets and won. And then terrified, exhausted, wanting to die, he runs into the wilderness and collapses under a tree. This is the spiritual giant. This is the one who saw fire fall. And he's done. He wants out. And God meets him there. Not with a lecture, with food and sleep. An angel bakes him bread and lets him rest. Twice, because sometimes the most spiritual thing happening in your life is that heaven is letting you recover. Then God calls him up the mountain. And there's a wind so strong it tears the rocks apart. But God's not in the wind. Then an earthquake. God's not in the earthquake. Then a fire. God's not in the fire. And then a sound, a whisper, a still, small voice. Some translations call it the sound of a gentle silence. And that whisper is where God was the whole time. Here's what I need you to hear. You've been waiting for the wind, the earthquake, the fire, the big dramatic sign that proves you're one of the chosen ones. And meanwhile, God's been speaking to you, in the whisper, in the silence, in the quiet knowing you keep dismissing, because it didn't come with thunder. The 1%, the title, talks about the ones who've reached this kind of seeing. They're not the ones who chased the loudest experiences. They're the ones who learned to hear the whisper. That's the whole difference. Everyone's standing in the wind, waiting for God. The few have learned He's in the silence. Let me bring this closer to home, because I don't want this to float up in the clouds where you can't touch it. You know that friend everyone has, the one people call when their life falls apart? The one who somehow always knows what to say? Who can sit in a room with someone who's drowning and say the one sentence that lets them breathe again? People think that's a personality trait, a gift of conversation. It's not. That's discernment. That's Noesis walking around in jeans and a t-shirt. That's a person who's been given the ability to see past the surface of a human being straight to the wound, and to know without being told exactly what that wound needs. Maybe that's you. And maybe you've spent your whole life pouring that out into everyone around you, wondering why you come home empty. Wondering why the gift that helps everyone else leaves you so depleted. I'll tell you why. Because a gift that flows through you without being rooted in God will always drain you. The same gift, surrendered back to the one who gave it, becomes a river that doesn't run dry. Think about Joseph for a second. Young man, dreamer, the kind of knowing that got him thrown in a pit by his own brothers. He could see things. He could interpret what was hidden. And what did it get him at first? Betrayal, slavery, a prison cell for a crime he didn't commit. His gift didn't make his life easier. For years, it made it harder. But here's the part nobody dwells on. In that prison, falsely accused, forgotten by the people he'd helped, Joseph kept reading the unseen. A cupbearer and a baker have strange dreams, and Joseph still leans in, still listens, still says, "Interpretations belong to God, but tell me what you saw." He didn't shut the gift down because it had cost him everything. He kept it open in the dark, and that faithfulness in the prison is the only reason he was ready when they finally called him to stand before Pharaoh. The dream that got him thrown in the pit is the same gift that eventually saved entire nations from famine. Same gift. The pit and the palace came from the exact same place inside him. The only thing that changed was that he learned to carry it God's way. So if your gift has cost you something, if your sensitivity has made you the family member who feels too much, the friend who sees too much, the one people don't quite know what to do with, I want you to hear this. You're not broken. You're Joseph in the pit. And the pit is not the end of the story. It's the training ground for the palace. There are messages that pass through your eyes, and there are messages that pass through your spirit. If something in you recognized itself while watching, don't dismiss it. That is the Spirit confirming what was already written. The secret protocol carries 7 keys that unveil what heaven deposited in you before you ever arrived, things no one around you has ever been able to name. It comes with the full audiobook for your moments of prayer, silence, and encounter with God. And you also receive the Awakening Map, the guide that illuminates the 5 seasons of spiritual awakening, revealing with precision exactly where you are and what comes next. The link is pinned in the first comment, but only for a limited time. Don't let this moment pass without a response. Now I want to go somewhere most teachers skip. Because reaching this kind of knowing isn't all light and revelation. There's a weight to it. And if I only told you the beautiful part, I'd be lying to you. And I won't do that. When your eyes open, you start seeing things you can't unsee. You see the cracks in people who seem fine. You feel the heaviness in a room everyone else calls peaceful. You sense when someone's words and their spirit are saying 2 different things. You walk away from conversations carrying things that were never yours to carry. And you can't always figure out why you feel so heavy. Nobody warns you about that part. They tell you the awakening is beautiful, and it is. But they don't tell you that seeing more means feeling more. And feeling more, without God to anchor it, can crush a person. And there's a temptation that comes with all that, seeing a dangerous one. The temptation to think you're above other people. To look around at everyone still asleep and feel a quiet superiority creeping in. Let me stop you right there. Because that's not awakening. That's the oldest trap there is. Look at the disciples. They walked with Jesus. They saw the water turn to wine. The dead come back. The storm go still at a word. If anyone had reason to feel like they'd reached something, it was them. And what did they do? They argued about who was the greatest. They tried to call fire down on a village that didn't welcome them. They told the children to get away from Jesus because they thought the kids weren't important enough. These men had front-row seats to the most extraordinary spiritual reality in human history, and they kept tripping over their own pride. So what did Jesus do? He knelt down. He took a towel. He washed their feet, the dirty, calloused, road-worn feet of men who'd been bickering about rank. And he said, "This is what greatness looks like in my kingdom." That's the test of real seeing. Not how much you perceive, how low you're willing to bend. The 1% who've reached this place aren't walking around feeling chosen and special and better. The real ones are the gentlest people you'll ever meet. Because the more God shows you, the more you understand how much grace you've been carried by. And a person who truly grasps that can't look down on anybody. So if this awakening has ever made you feel a little distant from people, a little impatient with the ones who don't get it, that's not a sign you've arrived. That's a sign there's still a foot in the room that needs washing. And that's okay. That's part of the road. I've been there. I had to learn it the hard way. I keep coming back to Daniel for this. A young man carried off to Babylon, dropped into the most powerful, most pagan court on earth, surrounded by every reason to lose himself. And the king has dreams no one can explain. Dreams that terrify him. He calls in all his wise men, all his magicians, every expert in the empire, and not one of them can touch it. They've got the credentials. They've got the reputation. And they've got nothing. Then there's Daniel, younger than them, an outsider, a captive. And before he goes in to interpret anything, what does he do? He gathers his friends, and they pray. They ask God for mercy. They don't strut in claiming they've cracked it. Daniel says plainly no wise man can show this to the king, but there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He gives every ounce of credit away before he says a single word of the answer. That's the posture. You can be the one in the room who sees what no one else can see, and still know with everything in you that the seeing isn't yours. It was given. Daniel never confused the gift with the source. He never started believing the revelations were proof of his own greatness. He stayed on his knees the whole way up. And that's exactly why God kept trusting him with more. Through kingdom after kingdom, king after king, Daniel kept his eyes open and his head bowed. And heaven kept pouring revelation into a man who refused to let it go to his head. If God has shown you things, if you're the one people come to when nothing makes sense, Daniel is your warning and your invitation at the same time. The warning, never start thinking the sight is yours. The invitation, stay low, stay grateful, give the glory away, and watch how much more heaven is willing to trust you with. Let me tell you about the one figure who reached this place, and almost no one talks about. Enoch. The Bible says almost nothing about him, and that's exactly the point. Just one line that echoes across the whole story. Enoch walked with God, and then he was not, because God took him. That's it. That's the whole biography of a man who reached a place of communion so complete that death didn't even get a turn. He didn't found a nation. He didn't part a sea. He didn't write a book. He just walked, day after day, year after year, in step with God so consistently that the line between earth and heaven got thin around him. And here's what gets me about Enoch. He didn't do anything flashy. There's no fire, no flood, no miracle attached to his name. Just a man who made a quiet, daily decision to stay close. And that quiet, unspectacular faithfulness took him further than all the loud prophets combined. That's what I want for you. Not a dramatic spiritual event you can post about. A walk. A steady, daily, unglamorous walk with God that slowly, quietly, makes you into someone heaven can pull close. Noesis at its deepest isn't an experience you have once. It's a friendship you keep. It's walking so long with God that his thoughts start to feel like your thoughts. His knowing starts to become your knowing. And one day you realize you've stopped asking whether you're one of the chosen because you're too busy walking to wonder. There's a man on the side of the road I can't stop thinking about. Bartimaeus, blind, begging, sitting in the dust outside Jericho where he'd sat for years, a fixture people stepped around on their way to somewhere better. And one day the crowd swells, the noise changes, and he asks what's happening. Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. Now here's the thing about Bartimaeus that wrecks me. He couldn't see a single thing with his eyes. But he saw something the whole seeing crowd missed. He saw who Jesus really was. While people with perfect vision were treating Jesus like a celebrity passing through, this blind beggar started screaming, "Son of David, have mercy on me." He named exactly who Jesus was. The blind man saw. The sighted crowd didn't. And the crowd told him to shut up, same as Eli telling Samuel to go back to sleep. Same as everyone who's ever told you the thing you sense isn't real. They rebuked him. They tried to silence the one man who actually perceived what was standing in front of all of them. And what did he do? He screamed louder. He refused to let other people's blindness shout down his seeing. So Jesus stops. The whole procession stops for the one person everybody told to be quiet. And he asks him a question that still echoes, "What do you want me to do for you?" And Bartimaeus says the simplest, truest thing, "I want to see." Sit with that. The man already saw more than anyone in that crowd. And still, what he wanted, what he ached for, was to see more. That's the heart of real noesis. It's not arriving at a place where you've seen enough. It's a hunger that grows the more your eyes open. The people who reach this place aren't the ones who think they've figured it all out. They're the ones still crying out from the side of the road, louder than the crowd that wants them silent. I want to see. If that's the cry in you right now, if underneath everything you've achieved and everything you've survived, there's still a voice saying, "I want to see. I want to know you. I want my eyes opened all the way," then you're closer to the 1% than you've ever let yourself believe. Because that hunger is the doorway. And heaven has never once turned away a person crying out for sight. There's a woman I think about too. Mary, not at the manger later. When the shepherds came with their wild story about angels, and the wise men came with their gifts, and Simeon spoke his strange prophecy in the temple. The Bible says she didn't run around telling everyone. It says she treasured these things and pondered them in her heart. She held them quietly. She let them work on her in private. That's a kind of knowing too. The discipline of holding what God shows you instead of spilling it everywhere for approval. Some of you have been given things you keep trying to explain to people who can't receive them, and every time you do, you feel a little smaller, a little more misunderstood. Maybe the answer isn't to explain it better. Maybe it's to do what Mary did. Treasure it. Ponder it. Let it grow in the quiet between you and God until it's ready to be more than words. Because not everything heaven gives you is meant to be defended in public. Some of it is meant to be carried in private, like a seed under the soil, doing its real work where no one can see. A seed that gets dug up to be admired stops growing, but a seed left in the dark, watered only by your time alone with God, becomes something that eventually breaks the surface on its own, and when it does, no one can argue with the harvest. Now let me bring this all the way back to you, right now. Sitting where you're sitting. Because I don't want you to walk away from this thinking Noesis is a mountaintop only a few mystics reach. I want you to understand it's the most natural thing in the world. For a child of God, it's just been buried under years of being told it was nothing. Remember the boy in the temple? The voice was calling the whole time. He just needed someone to help him recognize it. Remember Elijah? God was in the whisper the whole time. He just had to stop waiting for the fire. Remember Joseph? The gift was real the whole time, even in the pit. He just had to learn to carry it. Remember Enoch? The closeness was available the whole time. He just chose it, day after day after day. The thread running through every one of them is the same. The knowing was never the problem. The recognizing was. And recognizing is exactly what's happening to you right now. That stir you felt when you started watching, that wasn't curiosity. That was recognition. Something in you stood up and said, "That's me. He's talking about me." So here's what I'm asking you to do. Not to chase a feeling. Not to perform some spiritual achievement. Just to stop running to Eli. Stop running to every voice around you to confirm what God is already confirming inside you. And the next time that quiet knowing rises up, the next time you feel something before it happens, see past someone's surface. Sense the whisper under the noise, don't dismiss it. Turn toward it. And say what the boy finally learned to say. Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. That's the doorway. That's where the 1% live. Not in some elite spiritual club, but in the simple, faithful, daily decision to listen when the rest of the world has gone back to sleep. Before you go, I want to ask you something, and I really do read these. Somewhere in this video, one of these stories landed harder than the others. Maybe it was Samuel running to Eli, hearing his name and being told it was nothing. Maybe it was Elijah collapsing under the tree, and God meeting him with bread instead of a lecture. Maybe it was Joseph, keeping his gift alive in the prison. Maybe it was the foot washing. Maybe it was Enoch, just walking. Tell me which one. Tell me which story felt like it was reaching past the screen and touching something you've actually lived. Don't just say great video. Tell me the moment that found you, and tell me what it found. Because when you put words to it, you're doing the very thing this whole message is about. You're recognizing, out loud, and I want to witness it with you. And remember, everything I spoke about goes deeper inside the secret protocol, pinned in the first comment. The 7 keys, the audiobook, and the awakening map are there, waiting for you, whenever you're ready to take the next step.